Everyone seems to be giving Samsung a bit of a hard time over this, the new S25 Edge. Is it because it's very expensive and overheats a little bit and the battery's not very good, and also maybe you could get a better phone for similar money, simply for the advantage of it being thinner and a little bit lighter? But then again, they're trying something different. Apple's going to do something similar with the expected iPhone 17 Air. And I must admit, over the last few weeks I've been using this, it has grown on me, but I probably wouldn't buy one, at least not for full price. This is £1,099, 1,100 quid basically, same in dollars, which puts it bang smack in between the S25 Plus and the Ultra, which I suppose makes sense. It does borrow some of the features from the Ultra, like the 200 megapixel main camera, although the rest of it is closer to the Plus and the regular S25. The irony is though, for what is supposedly a head-turningly thin phone that gets your friends going, ooh, what's that? It's actually one of the most understated / boring looking phones I've seen in a while. I mean, it's very smart looking, but if they had some fun colors, some fun cases, closer to, say, what they do with the Galaxy Z Flip series, that could have made this a lot more interesting. Instead, you have a silver, a jet black, and an icy blue, which is basically this, just with a slightly more bluey tinge to it. It's not ugly, but it just kind of looks like a prototype, maybe? So the tech world has been oohing and ahhing at the prospect of this phone, the S25 Edge, since it was teased back in January as the one more thing at Samsung's Unpacked event for the launch of the S25. I saw it again at February at MWC, but it was strictly hands-off. So after all of that hype, now I've actually been using one for a couple of weeks, has the novelty worn off? Well, maybe a little bit, but I still do get like a nerdy, tingly feeling when I pull this out of my pocket and just hold it, especially without a case, because it is so incredibly thin. And actually, I think not just the thinness, but it's the lightness as well. It's that combination of the two. We're talking just 5.8 millimeters thick, and it weighs 163 grams. Now, I am not jerry-rig everything, I am not Lou from Unbox Therapy, so I don't really want to push this too far, but I am kind of curious, if you sat on it in a weird way, are you going to have any issues with how thin it is? Let's just do a little bit of a gentle-ish pressure test. It is flexing a little bit. I'm not sure if that's coming across on camera because it's on iFocus. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on that. It seems fine. Yes, if you put it at the edge of the desk and smash your hand down on it, it will probably break, but who's doing that? Any phone would do that. With this frame, with this build, and also with Samsung being very cautious, they've delayed this not only for sort of battery concerns, but also, I presume, wanting to make sure it's durable enough because they don't want another Galaxy Note 7 situation going on. I have no problems at all with the durability of this. Also, we do get IP68, not IP69, which some newer phones do offer, but that's for hot jets of water, so, taking it in the shower with you or something, but that's not really a big deal. IP68 is absolutely fine. Lovely thin symmetrical bezels. We have stereo speakers, obviously no micro SD or headphone jack or anything like that. If you do want a high-end phone with some of that stuff, then well, go and look at the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 7, but it really is incredibly lightweight for this size, and that's kind of important. This is a 6.7-inch phone, and while that does make the svelteness of it, the sleekness of it maybe more impressive, I think maybe this is a bit of a missed opportunity. I wish they'd gone for a more compact phone. This is 6.7 inches. I would have loved maybe a 6.3 or 6.5-inch screen, really doubling down on the thinness, the lightness, the compactness that makes it more comfortable to fit in your pocket or your purse or your jacket, however you like. But instead, while it is thinner and lighter, it's still a pretty big phone that will probably stick out the top of your pocket. Still, it is very nice to hold, although it is a bit of a wobbler on the desk. And that's about it. It's thinner, it's lighter. That's the whole USP of the Edge. And for that, you are compromising on battery life, thermal performance, actual performance, also camera. You only got the two lenses, no telephoto here because you couldn't squeeze one in. And it's also not cheap. You could get the Galaxy Z Flip 6 for less than this. But let's park that. Let's talk about the specs. As I say, 6.7-inch screen, 120Hz, Quad HD Plus AMOLED, basically the same as you get on the S25 Plus, and it is very nice, although sadly no sign of the anti-reflective coating from the Ultra. Inside we have the same 8 Elite for Galaxy as the other S25s. Next to the S25 Ultra, you can see that the Edge, well, doesn't have an edge here. In fact, it is a little bit slower, and also, as you'd expect, because it's so much thinner, it is also throttling quicker and more significantly. But hey, it's still an 8 Elite, it's still 120Hz, it's still Samsung's One UI software. It is a very fast phone, and you wouldn't really notice the difference in the performance every day between these two. What you may notice though, if you're recording lots of video or you are playing more demanding games, is the heat. This gets a little toasty. In fact, after 15 minutes of gaming, the Edge was around 3 degrees hotter than the Ultra in terms of external temperature, which isn't hugely significant, but it's also across a much larger area of the chassis, so you really do feel it in your fingers. Palms are sweaty, mom's spaghetti, etc. None of that is a deal breaker though. My biggest problem with the Edge, aside from having all the jokes about edging, is the battery life. For context, the Ultra has a 5000 mAh battery, which is a good size, but actually bordering on small now for some other similarly sized flagships. Obviously this is a little bit bigger. This, the Edge, has a 3900 mAh battery, very similar to what you get in the standard basic S25, which also bear in mind is a little bit smaller in terms of screen size. It's Full HD rather than Quad HD. It's not terrible. You will be able to get a full day out of this, but not much more. In fact, I just posted my big battery rundown test video, and I don't want to spoil who wins. Definitely going to have a watch of that afterwards, but what I will say is that the Edge came in last place, which usually would have been a Pixel phone, but now we have a new loser. It also only supports 25-watt charging, and we have basic Qi wireless charging as well, so it doesn't charge particularly quickly. This is like the first time I've had actual battery anxiety with a new 2025 phone. But if you're not playing demanding games, if you're not a power user, if you can top it up throughout the day, you have a wireless charging pad around you, then hey, maybe that's not a big deal and you can still consider this. Now, as you may have heard, the S25 Edge is quite slim, and famously, camera modules are quite thick. So there are some compromises here with the Edge's camera, but actually I think they've done a pretty good job on the whole. They've taken the same 200 megapixel main lens straight from the S25 Ultra, but then we have a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and this is taken from the regular S25 and S25 Plus, but they have added autofocus this time around. But sadly no telephoto, although since we do have that very high resolution main camera, rather than pixel binning, it can just crop into the sensor and still give us some pretty nice 2 and 3 times shots. With the Edge, it actually tops out at 10 times, and even that isn't really usable. And then around the front we have a 12 megapixel selfie camera, which is the same across the entire S25 lineup. Now, Samsung's cameras are good. My main complaint is, particularly with the Ultra series, that we just haven't really seen much hardware improvement over the last 2 or 3 years, and compared to a lot of the Chinese rivals, I feel like they are falling behind. Having said that, it is still a terrific camera system, particularly that main wide camera there. However, in low light, things aren't quite as good, and interestingly, I found that it didn't really go into its automatic night mode, where you have a longer exposure, as often as I would have expected, so I actually had to manually go to night mode more often. So the Edge has exactly the same options for video recording as the rest of the S25 family. Up to 8K 30, although mostly I'm shooting in 4K 60. There has been one other upgrade though. If you're shooting in HDR, it now captures 10-bit video, up from 8-bit last year. But I would 100% recommend you shoot all your video in Galaxy Log, because you can either add your own LUTs in the edit afterwards, or more simply just swipe up on the video, tap color correct, and then a few seconds later you have a much nicer looking video with better colors, better dynamic range, and it just looks less like you've taken it on a phone. Cool, it's a bit sunny today. This is being recorded with the front camera on the Edge, and uniquely out of the whole S25 range, the Edge is the only phone with a selfie camera where it can shoot in log, which actually is kind of important. Not everyone's going to use it, but hey, at least there's something different and unique about this, other than just being kind of lighter. You've got their Expert RAW mode, which you can download from the Galaxy Store, which will then be added to the More tab within the camera app, so you can play around. Front and back dual recording. You've got really good slow motion. You've got single take, which no one ever uses anymore. It's one of the few phones that not only lets you pause and then continue recording, but you can also switch between the front and the back while recording. You can shoot in log and HDR at all the frame rates and resolutions. And then it's everything on top of that. Tap and hold your finger on the screen to get an automatic slow motion, which is just like magic. I love how easy that is. You've got one of the best toolkits for AI features, both within the photo gallery for AI rating and expanding and all that business, but also just generally with Galaxy AI, even if you think it's a gimmick, even if you don't use it, it is good to have the option of the translations, the transcriptions, the writing tools, the portrait studio, and most recently with One UI 7, which came out earlier this year, you've got the briefing widget and the little now bar at the bottom. Samsung's UI has come such a long way in the last couple of years, and combined with 7 years of Android support, meaning this will be supported until, what year are we in now, 2032 in terms of full Android updates. The support you get with this, the trade-in value, it's right up there with Apple. It's best in class. We don't have to be here for 20 minutes. It is essentially an S25 Plus with a couple of the features from the Ultra, like the 200 megapixel main camera, but in a thinner and lighter form factor, which will cost you about £1,100. That is essentially it. You also get 256 gigs of storage as standard, along with 12 gigs of RAM, although you can pay a little bit more for 512 storage. Also, bear in mind that this is brand new compared to, well, the rest of the S25 family, which came out late January, so you can probably find some deals on this to actually make it maybe even the same price as this. And while this is significantly heavier and chunkier and, an Ultra, I would take this all day long. Mostly, if I'm honest, just for the anti-reflective screen. In fact, I've got a couple of lights pointing at me here. If I just sort of show you the difference. One of the most underrated best features of the Ultra, and it is exclusive to the Ultra. But what do you reckon? Interesting alternative or a completely stupid waste of time that is basically favoring literally form over function? Let me know what you make of the Edge in the comments below. I will leave a link if you fancy checking it out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.